Hey guys, this is Tom Bucks, and today we're looking at hand traps and how they're going to change over the next couple of months. Now before I begin, I just want to throw this out there. Now the hand trap line should be adjusted to the event that you're attending. If your locals does not match up to statistical data from all the other events, then you should readjust it. There's no point in playing like 7 bestial cards if your locals barely have any Ishizu Tira to begin with, because it's not really going to help you. If they're all Earth, all Wonder, you're going to have a ton of dead cards. If you're going to be going to larger events, then yes, then you should look at statistical data over the stuff that you see at locals, because you're going to have a much more biased view of what people are going to be playing. And a final point to consider is whether or not the hand traps themselves are worth it. Are they making enough impact, or is it just better to play some form of board breaker or counter play like triple tack or something like that? So let's take a look at the lineup we have so far. A lot of it's dedicated towards anti-tier limit Ishizu because they are the most powerful deck. They're tier 0 and they have the most representation. So it's warranted to dedicate a lot of spots towards it, and that's why the popularity of hand traps have been targeted towards anti-graveyard movements, such as bestial cards, self-replenishing, huge bodies, and they get the job done. Secondly, there's also Ghost Bell and DD Crow, more graveyard disruption, but for these two, they're just more generic overall because they do give you other kinds of coverage, and for the non-dark attribute, this really helps out. Then there's Infinite Impermanence being a generic cover-all because it does work against Ishizu tier, but it also works against other matchup, and you do need something like that because you can't over-dedicate everything towards one deck unless we're looking at a 90 percentile like top tier 0 deck. Then there's Ash, Gamma, and D-Shifter. Of course, D-Shifter only works when you can play the card or it's sided for sprites. Ash is just not very popular right now because there's just too many cards that Ishizu tier dumps into the graveyard. It's not very effective. And Gamma's ability is great, but it blows up the monster, which makes it also not that great because that's going to trigger the tier limit monster and cause a little bit of fusing. So yeah, that's why they're kind of taking the backseat compared to just the straight up grave removal. So if we go down a couple of months, how are things going to be different? Well, looking at the stat data of OCG, we can see that tier elements are still going to be the most popular deck, so not a lot of the hand trap lineup are going to change. However, you're going to have to adapt to one additional deck being shoved in there. That's going to be Cash Tira. Moving into the Photon Hypernova season, let's talk about the hand traps and their new impact moving forward. First off, Bestial. They're still going to be super popular because tier elements are going to be super strong, and they also have a new variant of tier elements Cash Tira. The key difference is that there is a new member, Baldrake. First of all, if you only play Serenir as a bestial name for removal, then you're likely going to replace it with Baldrake. Because Baldrake actually influences the field. If your opponent special summon a monster from the extra deck, you can activate Baldrake, treating a light or dark monster, just a different one, and then you get to banish that monster they summoned. And if you have Druid Swarm as the thing that you tributed, now you get to send another special summon monster on your opponent's side of the field to the graveyard. So that's perfect because now the Druid Swarm and Baldrake can attempt to banish 2 cards and remove 2 cards off the field. Continuing on with the rollover hand traps, you're likely going to see a lot more dimensional shifters. Not only is Floowandereeze going to continue playing it, and they're still going to be one of the more annoying decks that's sticking around, Cash Tira also main decks this hand trap, which makes it a lot more difficult for people to get access to the graveyard because this is also one of the more popular decks moving forward. And because everyone wants to be tier limits, this is the one hand trap that can essentially skip their turn and shut down all of their fusion plays. But there is a catch. See, D-Shifter is in an interesting class of hand trap where the more people that are able to synergize with it, the worse it gets. Right now, there's really only one deck that plays it, and that's going to be Floowandereeze. And they don't have to second guess themselves to shotgun the card because worst case scenario, it trades 1 for 1 because your opponent somehow has Call by the Grave, gets rid of it. But best case scenario, you'll skip your opponent's turn. But now there's a new worst case scenario. Now we enter Cash Tira. If you do it to a Cash Tira player blindly, they're going to be like, yeah, gee, thanks. Because now they get to turbo out their deck because they have triggers, they have preparation, they have like birth, a lot of cards that will just synergize with all the stuff being banished, which previously was gatekeeped by the graveyard. So that is a bit of a limitation that you have to keep in mind. Like Papias, if they activate Papias, they get to just add back a different Cash Tira card rather than basically put it to the graveyard and find some other way to trigger the card. So yeah, there's going to be some awkward synergy right there. But if we look at it down the line, depending on the event that you're playing, if you're going to your locals, or if you're playing your regionals, if you're going to be playing at your locals, check what people are playing because it could be a main deck staple if there's a bunch of tier elements, but it would be a terrible main deck if you're just playing against Cash Tiras and Floowandereeze and you essentially just gave yourself a -1 to turbo out your opponent's deck. Worst case scenario, it does nothing, but you're giving yourself a -1 either way. So that's kind of where we're sitting with this one. And throughout the season, you're likely going to see it move up and down in the main deck, into the side deck, That's where I see this particular card. And the last rollover hand trap is going to be Imperme. For Imperme, I like to hold on to it as long as possible, wait for the key choke point and drop it then. But if that's not possible or I missed it myself, then I'll hold on to it till it's my own turn and trade with my opponent then. Then I can turn off one of the disruptions, and that's at least an effective way of using it without wasting it. Now in terms of cash tier, sometimes you want to hit their stuff early. If you have one key hit and you've seen that, hey, they activated the field spell to add the unicorn, they special summon out the unicorn, then hey, this is an opportunity for you to actually hit them with the Imperme, especially when they activate the search of the spell card, because they don't get the search of the spell, and they also don't get to rip apart your extra deck and get a quick peek. Because if unicorn gets a peek at your deck, you can see that people are going to alter their strategy just to take away some key cards. Typically they're going to go for the Zeus because Zeus hurts them the most, but in any case, like, using Imperme is kind of like a carefree way of dealing with the unicorn, because if you use Ash to stop them from searching, then it's going to look at your extra deck and you're going to be fighting an uphill battle unintentionally. And on your own turn, sometimes there's just a Fenrir on board. You have to deal with it or else they're going to basically break your board apart. Then you're just going to have to turn off key elements just so that you can keep playing. So yeah, Imperme is quite important and very flexible here. As for the other matchups, say you want to play against Tira, this is still a decent card. I mean, it was used back on the release of Tira, but it was of course less popular now because we're just in favor of using like Graveyard Disruption. But hitting a Kikalos is still a very good hit because it prevents the mill 8 play. They don't get to special summon out the Merly and send the kit into the graveyard, granting that crazy mill. And yes, you should do it because there's really like very little that you can hit. I mean, you can try to hit a Rolkalos, but typically they'll put the Rolkalos under a Sprite Arrow, which kind of makes it useless. And Sprite is the one card that's kind of faster than your Imperme, so yeah, it makes it very difficult to counter with a single Imperme. Against Fluid, typically the same stuff. Right now, just don't, of course, Imperme them on their normal summon unless you have like 2 hand trap or 2 or 3 hand trap that you can stop every single summon possible. But otherwise, you should probably hold on to it for the barrier statue. There's like no point in just activating it. They chain Advent or Book of Moon. You waste your Imperme. You nag pretty hard on that play, and you're not going to be able to come back. So wait for the barrier statue during your draw or standby so they can't activate the trap card in response. And then if they don't have the barrier statue, you can also hit M-Pen, especially if you need to go into links to break the rest of the board. So these are different angles you can hit for Fluanderies. As for Sprites, I don't think anything changed here. If you're playing Imperme, your key choke points are going to be Sprind, and it's going to be Gigantic Sprite. Those 2 areas, if you hit those areas, you're usually going to force them to commit a lot more resources just to develop some kind of board. So to sum it up, Imperme is going to be the card that is the most flexible with varying degrees of impact. Now, before we continue, if you guys want to help support this channel and get yourself some nice goodies, check out MSTmerch.com. We got some fantastic sleeves. The fan favorite, of course, the Carbon Series White V2s. You guys have been singing praises about it, and I can't thank you guys enough for, enjoying this product. And there's also some cool designs by me. There's the Ulti Instincts foil. I think they're almost sold out, so you guys better pick them up while you can. I don't know when I'm ever going to restock those. And of course, there's going to be the mats, there's going to be the sleeves, and there's also over sleeves and box dividers. If you guys need to sort your boxes, all your bulk, and you want to keep a neat collection, we got the box dividers and we got the subdividers to help you tab out some of the specific areas where maybe it's the word the, or dark, or blackwing. You guys name it, archetypes. You guys name it, whatever you want. So check that out. If you guys want to learn how to sort, there's also a video for that as well. So thank you guys, and let's get to some of the new hand traps. For hand traps being reintroduced, the first one I'm going to talk about is Drone Lockbird. Because of Cash Tira's popularity, it's likely going to have a lot of impact against that deck because every single card search, if you go for the field spell, you're searching. You're terraforming, you're searching. You go for any of the big monsters, they're searching. Whether it be Fenrir or Unicorn or even Ogre, they're all doing some level of adding from the deck. So if you hit them with a draw, you're cutting their combo short. And you're also cutting back on their follow-up resources. So that's a pretty big one. Whether it be Field Spell, Unicorn, Fenrir, yeah, they're not going to be able to get anything. So that's a pretty big hit, and you're going to minimize the amount of threats you have to handle coming onto your turn. And this card does have overlap with other decks as well, starting with Fluanderies. If you cut off the Fluanderies from searching, they're not going to be able to tribute summon. That's the big part of it. It was really good when Fluanderies first came out. I mean, it was also like pretty decent against Sword Soul as well. So yeah, Droll definitely has high impact because if you go Rabina out of Eaglin, you Droll them, they don't get any searches anymore. They don't get any more summons. And yeah, that kind of cuts down the entire play there too. And against Sprite, Yes, Sprite also has searches, and here's the thing: a lot of Sprite players, they were also playing a cash Tira package of Fenrir, whether it be Fenrir or Unicorn. If they activate that as their first search, then they're not gonna be able to search as Blue or Jet, and that's pretty big if you ask me, because Blue and Jet is what leads to the big boards and the big plays. So that is also a limitation on their side, and they can also trigger it thanks to using the Fenrir. If they use Fenrir, then you can expect the Sprite board to be extremely tiny. Okay, next is Nibiru, and okay, this is not gonna sound very good, but you know, Nibiru is still very good against cash Tira, especially when they drop it after the Arise Heart has been put onto the field. Then yes, it's fantastic. You wipe their board, and the turn is more or less free. The deck is done, but it's so bad against Tearlaments. It's not very good against Sprite. It's bad against Wonderies. I don't know why you would play it, so likely you're going to see it as a side deck option more than a main deck option, because it's got like so many bad matchups that it's not really worth maining. However, side decking, yeah, you can probably decide if you can deal with cash Tira, but even then, it's not going to be that good. So here's how it's going to work. Likely people are going to be playing it in the very beginning, and then they're going to side in the Nibiru. Okay, that's cool. But then they're going to realize the cash Tira players are also playing the adventure package, and now you need Nibiru plus another hand trap because you have to deal with the Wandering Griffin Rider. So eventually you're going to have it in the deck, and then you're probably going to phase it out for probably just board breakers. That's what I would say. Because honestly, if you're going to use Nibiru as a board breaker, why not actually just play a board breaker on your own turn, like a Lava Golem? With that being said, Nibiru still will have impact with some of the existing matchups. Let's look at Sprites right now. I'm a Sprite player. Right now, I completely disregard Nibiru. I'm just going to go all in every time. I'm going to expect that my stuff are going to go through because I'm expecting no one's actually playing Nibiru in their main deck. So I'm going to be able to just drop my entire Sprite board without even worrying about losing all my cards. So I ignore red a lot of the times because I don't think it's even necessary. Most of the cards that are trying to hit me, they're hitting stuff in the graveyard. So I have Ghost Spell for that. So basically, if they're sticking with that mentality and they're moving on with that in the next format, then yes, you can use Nibiru to punish them super hard, but just keep in mind that you gotta hit them with Nibiru when they use Gigantic Sprite, and that will also lock them out afterwards, so that's the best part. And the last hand trap that's likely going to be seeing play in the sideboard, that's going to be Artifact Lancia. Lancia is actually very good, and it actually has implications on a lot of the different matchups. So looking at the first matchup, we have cash Tira, because if cash Tira wants to break a board and you Lancia them, it's like almost near impossible. They're probably going to either go into a Big Eye or they're going to be going into a Zeus, because none of the cash Tiras will work. You can't activate Rise Heart, you can't summon Scareclaw, you can't summon out Tearlament's cash Tira because you can't banish anything. That creates a very big flaw. They're basically tied down with a ball and chain anytime they want to do anything because they can't banish anything. It does hurt a lot. And Fenrir, being a great removal and all, can't remove anything if they're under Imperial Iron Wall. So if they're locked out of banishing, it does stun them pretty badly. As for overlapping coverage, Bestials, and Flunderies, there's some level of impact there, especially with Flunderies, because I remember, of course, back in the day we did use Artifact Lancia against them. All of the resources that would typically get recycled back to the hand, they're sent to the graveyard, and they don't trigger when you summon out a different Wing Beast, so that's some resources that they're going to have to work really hard to get back or not get back at all. As for the Bestial, if you just shotgun Lancia, yeah, it does hurt them because a lot of the Magnamuts, the Jurisrums, those guys can't come out. And if they try to go to Albion to get their play, they can't banish anymore, so you might have cut off their fusion line, so they're kind of just stuck with a Lubellion in the graveyard that they can typically bring back out, and then they just kind of end on a kind of a weirder board, because I don't think they're going to be able to get to Mirror Jade if they start with the Albion line. So yeah, they got that to consider. So these are some of the impact that would come out thanks to the reintroduction of Artifact Lancia. And that's how the hand traps are likely going to shift from our current format to the Photon Hypernova format. Of course, as the season progresses, the format's going to get more and more solved, and you should always adapt to the latest text based off of course, new tournament data, statistics. But that's all I got for this video, guys. If you guys enjoyed this video, help you break down some of the new stuff coming up, especially when you're jumping back into the format because you've skipped this one, this is a pretty good place to start. And yes, if you guys want to be the first to know some of the newest rarities of the cards, you guys better hit that subscribe button because they're coming up very soon. And thank you guys for watching. Check out MST.TV, and I'll see you guys in the next one.